Hello, Blake Bruning here from Trinity Whip Co. and
Steve Townsend from Townsend Handcrafted Whips.
And we've been working side by side for 9 months, and we just got our whip room remodeled. So we want you to check out Trinity Whip Co. headquarters. So one of the things that we were most excited about when we were going to remodel this was looking at the future. You know, as you get older, you know, things change. Your body just can't handle all the stress. And a lot of times one of the biggest problems whip makers have is rolling a whip. Now, to roll a whip, you need a nice table surface, or you can make something on the ground that work, or just use a good floor like a hardwood floor or something on, you know, linoleum, a tile-based thing. Hopefully it's flat, not the tiles ridges. But, you know, you need something strong to roll with. Now, there's a lot of ways to work around things. There's always tons of workarounds and things you can do. You can even get like a board this long and just roll it and slide the whip on, put a tarp under it. I mean, there's a lot of ways to work on it, but generally, all rolling is done on the ground. And so you're always spending a lot of time, you know, mopping and cleaning the ground, always scrubbing the crap out of it, you know, and just really working hard to always maintain it, because any dust, debris, whether you split or just move hides around, a lot of that just flakes off. And so you just have to constantly clean your floor. And while, you know, you need to do that when you're braiding everything else, we got tired of having to deal with that problem and the problem of being on our knees. Now, there's a lot of whip makers I know that might do some things different. Instead of just rolling on their floor, they might just put a foot on a board and roll it. You know, some people use, you know, do different things, just different ways to find ways. But as you get older, you gotta definitely, or as you're looking at your process, even from a young whip maker's point of view, you gotta start thinking about, when you're doing things, your posture. You can't always be hunched over braiding or whatever you do. Even if you're sitting, you need to make sure you have good posture, because it adds up. You spend hours in a bad chair. And so when we were making stuff, I was trying to think, how can I maximize my equipment at the same time minimize the equipment I use? And so we're still under construction. I still got a lot to clean out. It's been a long project, but one of my favorite things to show you right now, we're gonna have Steve Townsend demonstrate from Townsend Handcrafted Whips, and we're gonna demonstrate the rolling table, all right? And so this is to solve a lot of problems, and you'll see more about how.
Hello, Steve Townsend here with Townsend Handcrafted Whips, and just wanted to give you a better look at the rolling table that was designed by Blake Bruning of Trinity Whip Company, and I had a little bit of influence on that myself, but not a whole lot, to be honest. But this thing is really great, and if there's any whip makers out there that have the opportunity to make something like this, I really think you should, because it's just beneficial for a lot of reasons. He's designed it so that it can be folded up like it is now and put up against the wall. You could use this for a workbench. For one thing, we're rolling the whips up off of the floor, so we're not dealing with all the dirt on the floor that you got to clean up. It stays fairly clean. So that's a benefit to having a table like this. And you know, you get around our age, which I won't mention, and you're still making whips, your back starts to feel it, you know, when you're on the floor rolling a 10, 12-foot whip. That gets a little exhausting. So this table is really great for a lot of reasons. So the whole thing is hinged together on the one end. So all I got to do is pull this thing out. And latch her together. And now I've got a nice flat straight surface to roll long whips, or if you have just a short whip, obviously you can just leave it folded up and roll your short whip. But I've got a 10-foot whip here that just happens to be ready to be rolled. So I'm going to lay this thing out. Got a little bungee cord here. There like that, and down here we've got another eye we can attach. This falls the way I'm going to do this whip, a shorter whip. We've got another leather lanyard here we can tie to a handle or whatever we need, just to hold the whip in place while I roll it. That ought to work. And then we just use a 4x4 and a U.S. Post Office priority mail package, because they're easy to obtain and easy to use for what we need. and just get to start rolling. The table was built very strong, so I can put all the weight on this I want. This is very sturdy. If you do like getting on your knees, or if you need more purchase or weight on the whip, you can get up here. But for old guys like me, maybe a little easier like this. So now we've got that whip rolled, and you know, a little about rolling whips. As you can see, once the whip is rolled, it's really straight. I mean, it doesn't really, it's tight, everything's braided really nice and tight, it's very well compacted, but the whip is straight. It has its quirks as far as how it wants to bend, depending on how it was braided and how consistent of a braider you are. But what really is going to give a whip its curve is the way that you roll that up and store the whip when you're done. So what we do, you know, is I just know that this was the top of my yoke and here's the seam. So I'm going to impose a will of mine on this whip, and I'm going to just make it roll and coil with that seam, and bring that seam on around and make sure that that seam stays on top as this whip is rolled up, so that as it gets thrown out, the coil, it'll coil out and roll out nice and straight. And now what's going to happen, and I can't really speak for nylon, because I've made a few nylon whips, but not very many at all. But I can say with leather that once it gets used to being stored or kept a certain way, that'll become its tendency. So if you keep your whip rolled up the same way every time, which hopefully you do, it's going to want to have that coil in it. And you'll find that after it sits for a while and really accepts that coil, that as you go to coil the whip up, the length of the whip along the floor will have to kind of flip over, where the whip is just destined for that coil. And it'll be, you know, it'll take that coil so much that you could just take the whip and twist it over, and it'll make that loop. It's already learning that coil I just put into it. It's going to have a tendency to accept that particular coil in that particular shape. So what I like to do, you know, as soon as I get a whip done and rolled up, is to just take it and coil it up in its shape that I want it to be in, and just leave it be, let it sit, and it'll just get used to being stored in shape like that. And as the whip is used and gets broke in, it'll still, so long as the user coils the whip up that way every time, it'll stay that way. It'll always have that nice coil and that nice round shape. And so now, with our rolling table, now that I'm finished with this whip, I could just set it aside. And with our rolling table, I can just unhook my latches back here so that this will open up. And just to start bending, and just store this baby back up against the wall. Easy peasy. And so, like I said, if you had a 3 foot, 4 foot, 5 foot, you know, maybe even a 6 foot whip, you could just leave the table like this, fold it up, and roll it right here. And then all this is on top is just some floor tiles, just to give us a smooth surface. It's easy to clean and get us up off of the floor, so it's easier on our backs, and there's less dirt and debris getting into the whip. If you didn't do a good job of cleaning your floor, you'll get into that. So that's about it. Hope you like this portion of the video, and we'll see you next time.